Wait, you were planning to live with us without even being invited? Isn't that a bit too presumptuous? Just seeing your face makes me sick. We want to live as a family alone, so outsiders should leave. These were such unkind words from Jenna. I had always worked hard for the sake of my eldest son and his wife, and yet to have this as the result, it's just too unfair. I had always acted with my eldest son and his wife in mind. I kept thinking about how to make their life a little more comfortable. That's why being neglected by them was something I just couldn't forgive. It seems Jenna doesn't understand her place. Well then, I'll have to make her realize it. With that determination, I devised a thorough plan to bring Jenna down. My name is Stephanie, a housewife in my 50s. I live with my husband Hildred, and it's just the two of us. We have one son. Our eldest son, Brad, graduated from a prestigious private university and secured a job at a top-tier company that everyone knows. When Brad landed a job at a leading company, we celebrated grandly as a family. Brad, while working, seemed to have met a wonderful woman. The first time I was introduced to my son's wife, Jenna, I felt she was strong-willed and very capable. Brad has always been a bit shy, so I was confident that they would complement each other well. Both Brad and Jenna seemed serious about wanting to marry. As parents, we felt there was nothing more to say. Their wedding was modest, attended only by close family and friends, but it was filled with genuine happiness. For me, Brad's wedding remains a cherished memory. Initially, Jenna and I got along well. Though strong-minded, she was somewhat clumsy with household chores and often struggled. I used to give her tips on managing household tasks. At first, Jenna seemed grateful, thanking me and accepting the advice openly. But gradually, Jenna's attitude changed for the worse, and she began to treat me coldly. "Stephanie, you're here again. You really have too much free time, don't you? You do our housework, but do you take care of your own home? Or maybe you're dumping everything on Hildred." Indeed, I frequently visit my son and daughter-in-law's house to help Jenna, who struggled with household chores, but that didn't mean I neglected my own home. Being accused in such a manner was unavoidably upsetting, but I knew that any confrontation would only lead to more trouble. It would hurt Brad, and I didn't want to cause any issues. So I chose to remain silent, but this seemed to irritate Jenna even more. "Ignoring me again? Really? It's the worst when a mother-in-law disregards her daughter-in-law's words. I'm trying to be serious for your sake, but it's painful not being heard. Can you leave for today? I don't want to see your face. Please, just go." With those words, Jenna pushed me out of the house. The housework was left unfinished, but after being thrown out like that, there was nothing more I could do, so I quietly went home. Interactions like today's had become more frequent. While doing chores, if Jenna started making snide remarks and I ignored them to avoid a fight, it only made her angrier, leading to me being forcibly kicked out. It had become a usual occurrence. So I tried not to let it bother me, but it was getting harder to keep up this act. I thought about consulting Brad or Hildred, but I feared it would only make things worse, so I remained silent. I still don't know if this choice was the right one, but I believed I made the best choice in my own way, without knowing that the gears were going awry. There wasn't just one unpleasant thing related to Jenna. The issues with Jenna weren't just one or two things. Another unpleasant incident involved our monthly dinner with my son and his wife. We had decided to host a monthly dinner at our house to ensure that the eldest son and his wife could enjoy delicious meals, and to create an opportunity for us to spend time together. I would prepare the dishes for this gathering. During those times, I aimed to use high-quality ingredients and put extra effort into cooking. The goal was to prepare delicious dishes that would uplift their spirits and make them feel better. On that particular day, I had prepared steak, a special steak made from the highest quality meat. After finishing the cooking, we all sat down to start the meal. Initially, everyone silently savored the deliciousness of the meat. However, after a while, Jenna suddenly threw her knife onto the table. "Jenna, what's wrong?" This sudden outburst surprised Brad, Hildred, and me, but Jenna, ignoring our shock, shouted at me. How could you serve such an awful meal? This is the worst. Stop harassing me like this. What if I get sick? Jenna expressed her anger vividly, grabbing me by the collar. But the meat couldn't possibly be bad. I had prepared the best quality meat and cooked it carefully to ensure it tasted good. It was clear that Jenna was just finding fault. Although irritated, I didn't want the atmosphere to get any worse, so I said, "Jenna, I'm sorry if it wasn't to your liking. I had hoped you would enjoy it," and apologized sincerely. Then Jenna said, "I don't want to eat anymore," grabbed her things, and left the house.
"Jenna seemed off today."
Brad muttered this to himself, left behind. It confirmed my suspicions. Brad didn't know Jenna's true nature. But should I reveal Jenna's true nature to him? After much thought, I decided not to talk about Jenna. Or rather, I couldn't. Talking about Jenna would mean I was creating a rift between the two of them myself. I couldn't do that. My relationship with my eldest son and his wife, especially with Jenna, was deteriorating day by day. I spent many sleepless nights worrying about how we could get along better. Then one day, Brad came to our house with a suggestion.
"How about we live together?"
According to Brad, he and his wife had been making arrangements to move in with us. Jenna, who had experience working in real estate, was in charge of finding a suitable property for the four of us to live in. It was hard to believe Jenna would agree to such a thing. I suspected there might be an ulterior motive, but from a practical standpoint, it was an efficient way to support my son and his wife. So we agreed to the cohabitation and waited for the plan to progress. Eventually, when a property was decided, Brad and I went to see the new house. Arriving at the address Jenna sent, we were astonished. The place Jenna had chosen for us to move into was a high-rise apartment complex, and that too on the top floor.
"You're kidding, right?"
Brad seemed unable to accept this reality. Jenna greeted us there. Though Brad looked troubled the entire time, when we offered to contribute to the cost, he reluctantly agreed to move to the high-rise. Jenna had chosen this place, and refusing to move to the high-rise might upset her even more, we feared. We planned to bear the cost of the rent ourselves. But then something happened that overturned everything that had come before. It was something Jenna said on the day of the move. As I was bringing in my belongings, Jenna pointed at me and said something shocking. "Stephanie, are you moving in with us?" Confused by her words, I tilted my head. Perhaps they were not searching for a place to live with us after all. That was the plan. As I answered, puzzled by Jenna's words, she laughed cruelly and said something terrible. "Wait, you were planning to live with us without even being invited? Isn't that too presumptuous? Just seeing your face makes me sick. We're going to live as a family alone, so outsiders should leave." Saying that, Jenna pushed me out of the house, just like before. She also did the same to Hildred. We stood dejected at the front door. When she agreed to live together, I had hoped Jenna had changed her mind, but I was wrong. This was Jenna's strategy all along, a setup to disappoint me. Unforgivable. I had always worked so hard for my son and my daughter-in-law. To have my efforts so thoroughly dismissed like this? It seems Jenna does not understand her position. In that case, I'll make sure she understands. With that in mind, I devised a plan to trap Jenna. Ultimately, my husband and I had been kicked out of our son's new place. But giving up wasn't an option for us. Hildred and I discussed our next steps, and he agreed with the plan I proposed. So we decided to take action immediately. First, I called Brad and made sure Jenna was there, asking him to put the phone on speaker. Then I said, "Since Jenna wishes it, let's disown each other. From today onwards, we are no longer a family." Hearing this, Brad desperately tried to stop me.
"Mom, please don't say that. What will we do without you and Dad?"
Brad sounded truly distressed. Honestly, I felt sorry for him. After all, none of this was his fault. But Jenna, trying to calm Brad, said, "That's fine, let's go with disowning. It'll be refreshing not to have Stephanie and her nuisance around. We won't have to please Stephanie anymore." Brad sounded trouble, saying,
But
"Then it's settled. We're disowned. Don't ever call us again." And with that, she hung up the phone. And just like that, we were disowned. But this was still an incomplete form of revenge. The real drama was just beginning. For that, we executed our next plan. The next incident occurred 3 days later. When I returned from work, there were 200 missed calls in the call history, and every single one of them was from Jenna. Looking at the date, I realized it was my payday. Realizing that, I nodded in understanding. Ah, I see what's going on. I thought I no longer needed to answer the phone since we were estranged, but I couldn't help but wonder just how much she was being pushed. So I decided to have a conversation with her over the phone just once. "Hello, Stephanie. Where are you right now? Are you at home? Please come over right away. We need your help." As soon as I answered, Jenna's voice was dripping with panic. I couldn't believe she was this concerned by just this much. As a smile inadvertently crept onto my face, Jenna noticed, and her tone turned angry. "Why are you laughing? We're really in trouble. We might be kicked out of our house. You're our only hope." Kicked out of the house? Those words gave me a pretty good idea of what had befallen my son and his wife. But instead of delving into the heart of the matter, I asked, "What happened exactly?" "Well, actually," as I prompted her, Jenna began to tell me about their situation. Jenna realized something was amiss just moments ago. Today was Brad's payday, and she, excited about having money in hand, headed to the bank. But when she checked the bank account, she found it was 1.3K less than usual. She couldn't reach Brad to ask about it, as he was at work and couldn't answer his phone. Jenna, who was in charge of managing their finances, knew exactly how painful the loss of this 1.3K would be. She had intended to use this money for rent. Now without it, they couldn't afford the rent and were panicking. But Brad was at work and couldn't help. Realizing their situation, Jenna decided to ask us for help since we were originally supposed to pay their rent. "We can't pay the rent without that money. If we don't, we'll be kicked out of this house we finally got. I can't believe we might have to give it up." Indeed, if Jenna and Brad were evicted from their current home, they would have nowhere to go and would be in trouble. Jenna needed to secure the money somehow to pay the rent. That money, it's never coming back, because that was the money I used to send as financial support. Now that we're disowned, I see no need to send it. So no matter what you say, I can't help you. You need to figure it out yourself. The truth was, the missing money Jenna referred to was not Brad's salary, but the financial support I had been sending them. Brad had a low income, and they were struggling financially. Seeing Brad so worn out by this, I couldn't bear it, and decided to send financial support, hoping it would ease his burden a bit. Brad was grateful, but also felt ashamed of receiving money from his mother at his age. I had a particular suggestion for Brad. There's no need for spouses to share everything. If keeping some secrets helps protect one's peace of mind, then it's okay to pretend that the 1.3K was part of Brad's earnings. Initially, Brad felt guilty, but this was the only way to protect his self-esteem. So the 1.3K I was transferring was believed by Jenna to be Brad's salary. "That's unfair. To keep secrets from me? I've been trying hard too." Jenna's voice sounded disappointed, but it wasn't enough for me. The disrespect Jenna showed to me, to us, cannot be compensated for with just this. "How are we supposed to live now?" Jenna asked, sounding desperate. But that wasn't my concern. After all, it was Jenna who angered us. If she hadn't been so terrible, this could have been avoided. Yet now that she's in trouble, she asks for help from anyone, even the mother-in-law she used to harass. Sighing at her overly convenient attitude, Jenna muttered, "I'm sorry. Please, Stephanie, help us. We're really in trouble. What if Brad ends up homeless? Isn't Brad your precious only son? Isn't this something money can solve?" Indeed, Brad becoming homeless would be problematic, but I had already prepared for such a situation. If Brad ever found himself homeless, he could come to our house. This was the promise we had with Brad. Even if Brad ends up homeless, as long as he divorces Jenna, we're willing to welcome him into our home. Brad is our precious eldest son. We know he has a kind heart, so we'll extend our help to him. Our issue was with Jenna, not Brad. It would be too cruel to involve Brad in this. If things got tough, we intended to live as a family of 3. That had always been our plan. What? That's not fair. I'll come to your house too. Yes, you must be at home right now. I'll come there right now. If we talk face to face, maybe we can understand each other. But honestly, I didn't want to live with Jenna anymore. She had said we weren't family. Living with someone who feels that way about us is impossible. We're supposed to be disowned anyway, so even taking this call is more than she deserves. It's a final act of mercy. I found myself astonished by Jenna, who keeps saying such self-centered things. It's pointless for you to come. You don't even know our address. Hearing this, Jenna sounded surprised. It seems Brad has kept our promise. We've moved, too, to a new beautiful house. We're no longer at the old address, so coming to see us would be futile. Since the day the eldest son and his wife moved, we started looking for a new property. A real estate acquaintance offered us an almost brand new house at an exceptional price. It was less than a year old, still in pristine condition, and it stole our hearts immediately. Now we have moved into that house and are living there. Of course, we've told Brad the address, but also instructed him never to disclose it to Jenna. Brad is somewhat meek, and I was worried he might accidentally spill the beans, but that concern was unwarranted. How could you? Where is this new house? Tell me right now. Aren't we family? Don't families help each other out when in trouble? We are in trouble right now. Please help us. The pretense of family now. After all, Jenna once said we weren't family, and that just looking at us made her nauseous. Now that things have turned against her, she's pretending we're family, begging for help. It's too sneaky and selfish, and it made me feel sick. I didn't give up on Jenna from the start. Initially, I tried my best to accept and be accepted by Jenna as a family, but it was Jenna who ruined all those feelings. The more I talked to her, the more my resentment towards her grew. I thought maybe talking now would bring a time when I could forgive her past actions, but that wasn't the case. Jenna is an unnecessary existence to me. Returning to her and living as a family would be hellish for me. So I made it clear. Stop pretending to be family. Remember what you've done to me? Kicked me out of the house, called my cooking awful, said you felt sick just looking at me. After being treated so horribly and hearing such awful things, becoming family with you is absolutely impossible. I'm sorry, but give up on me. Sort out your own issues. Don't involve us anymore. With that, I hung up the phone. Up until I hung up, Jenna was saying, "Wait, please." And, "Let me talk." But that's irrelevant to me now. As soon as I hung up, my phone wouldn't stop ringing with message notifications. As expected, all the messages were from Jenna, but the notifications were so noisy and bothersome that I ended up blocking Jenna's contact. With this, I finally severed my ties with the presence that had been disturbing my peace of mind. I felt a deep sense of relief from this fact. In the end, it seems that the eldest son and his wife got divorced. There were times when life was tough, but above all, Brad had been dissatisfied with Jenna's attitude towards me for a long time, and had been holding on to that resentment. The fact that the usually quiet Brad yelled at Jenna during the divorce mediation suggests that he had accumulated a considerable amount of anger. Brad even demanded alimony from Jenna as a part of the divorce settlement. Of course, Jenna had no ability to pay such a thing, so she ended up seeking refuge with her parents for help. However, when Jenna's parents learned of Jenna's actions, they were furious. They kicked Jenna out of the house and essentially cut off ties. With no one to rely on, Jenna is said to be living in an old apartment and struggling to keep up with the alimony payments. I could easily imagine that she's living through a hellish daily life. Since then, as promised, Brad has been preparing to welcome us into our home. However, it seems that Brad has a sense of responsibility, saying that he couldn't admonish Jenna right away, so it seems that he has decided to live in the rented apartment for a while. He's actively searching for a new job after quitting his low-paying job. I offered to resume financial support if life became too tough, but he hesitated due to what had happened. We are watching over Brad. Surely Brad will eventually find a good job in line with his skills. As parents, we pray that Brad can achieve a bright future